Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to a Billy Idol album ranking. So, of course, he's the original vocalist for Generation X, a punk group who first did the song Dancing with Myself that Billy would later take to super fame. But he goes solo in 1981, and 44 years on from that, he's released 9 studio albums and 3 EPs. And with his newest album, Dream Into It, I thought it was time to do a ranking of not only the 9 studio albums, but also those 3 EPs, giving us 12 things to count down here for Billy Idol. We're going to get into it in just a bit. But before we start, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date on really cool things like this with a Billy Idol album ranking. So as I mentioned, 9 studio albums, 3 EPs, all going to be ranked here. And we're going to kick off with one that I wouldn't normally put into an album ranking because it's not necessarily new original material, but it is a Billy Idol album. He did make it. Number 12 is Happy Holidays from 2006. 7th studio album. It is an album of his, but it features renditions of traditional Christmas songs, albeit there are 2 new songs on here, or I should say 2 original songs, Happy Holiday and Christmas Love. My complaint with this, though, is that Billy does not sing in the typical snarling sound that we know from Billy Idol. This is more of him doing a crooning style like Frank Sinatra. And so it just really doesn't fit what I consider a Billy Idol album to be. And if you guys know the song Yelling at the Christmas Tree, that song came off of Devil's Playground. That was a Christmas song that sounds like Billy Idol. Well, none of it sounds like that on here. So, it's just not his regular sound. I normally wouldn't even count it in this because of that. But like I said, it is one of his albums, so I did want to rank it and put it in here, but it's going to fall at the end like that. All right, moving on, coming in at number 11, Cyberpunk from 1993, 5th studio album, recorded without longtime guitarist Steve Stevens in tow. Billy was inspired by technology for this one here, using computers to record the album. There was a limited edition one that came out at the time, which came with a 3-inch computer disc with it that you could, get all kinds of cool information. I don't remember if there was a game or something you could play on it, but he really incorporated technology into this album here. He moved further away from the rock format for the album itself, using synthesized vocals and even adding in industrial sounds, which were starting to become fairly popular. And again, remember, this is 93, so the alternative rock movement had already begun in 91. And, I think he was really trying to incorporate and move on and grow. The album did have the song Shock to the System, which great song in and of itself, sounding much like his classic stuff from the past, or at least as close as we were going to get to it, but the rest of the album did not at all. Still, there was a few good standout songs, including the song Adam in Chains, which I always really liked, but a lot of these things had the more intense type dance beats and beyond the type of stuff that he would normally have incorporated into his music. The other thing was there was narration between most of the tracks, and it really broke up the flow, just making it much harder for me to overall enjoy the album. Still, when the album came out, I did work really hard to try to get into it, listen to this thing repeatedly, and not that I didn't like it, just that it wasn't what we were used to. And so years on from it, I look back at it far less fondly than at the time, where I was maybe enjoying it more when it came out, but it's just not an album that I return to very often, which is why it ranks as low as it does. All right, coming in at number 10, Devil's Playground from 2005, his 6th solo album. First album in 12 years at the time when this one came out, since Cyberpunk, which was 1993. It's also got Billy Idol reuniting with Steve Stevens, which in and of itself is celebratory to not only be getting an album after 12 years, but to be getting Steve Stevens returning to the album. But the album was heavily influenced by what was going on in modern music at the time. We were kind of at the height of the pop punk or just coming off of all of that. And so a lot of that was incorporated in to the music. And while, yes, I do think Billy Idol heavily influenced the younger generation that was doing the pop punk movement, really wasn't something that I was excited to hear Billy covering on here. Though there are some good songs on this one. I like the song Scream, Plastic Jesus, Romeo is Waiting, all really good standout songs, less of that pop punk vibe. But the first two songs that open this album, Super Overdrive and World Coming Down, were just not my cup of tea. And so unfortunately, the album itself starts off with a couple tracks that have never clicked with me. And so again, making it an album that I don't reach for very often. Tie into that what I mentioned earlier, which is this album includes that Christmas song, Yelling at the Christmas Tree, at track number 7. So it just breaks up the flow. And again, enjoyed it when it came out, but don't return to this one very often. Coming in at number 9, the newest Billy Idol album, Dream Into It from 2025. Yes, if you're watching it any other time, I want to give you the year, but it did just come out last week. So brand spanking new, 9th studio album. First new album in 11 years since Kings and Queens of the Underground, which I think is an absolutely outstanding album. So the album itself, it's been a long time. We're finally getting a new album. It's a follow-up to a really great one. The first single, Still Dancing, was absolutely fantastic. Has a very classic sound like his older material, but the album ultimately falls short. Doesn't have a very good mix. There's a lot of guest vocals on it. He uses vocal filters. There's electronic drums on some of this stuff. The song sequencing, I don't think, flows very well on here. So unfortunately, all things that make this not rank very high, at least currently. Maybe with multiple, more listens years on from now, maybe I'll feel differently about it. I have done a full review of it. I will leave a link in the description if you want to know more about that album. There is still lots to love about it, but all in all, it does fall short of what the expectations were for it. Okay, coming in at number 8, The Cage from 2022. It is his 3rd studio EP. It's the first EP we're covering here. Those others had all been albums up till this point, but as I said, I want to incorporate in the EPs. Follow up to the Roadside EP from 2021. So a nice short succession release for this, only 1 year on. Roadside had a very classic sounding feel to it. This one here, he changes up his sound as he does on so many different albums, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. This one here, kind of midline, adds in more modern sounds that are going on to it. It works well enough on the title track, but on songs like Miss Nobody, where he's adding in R&B, disco, and I generally like that sort of stuff being added. I have to say that on this particular one, it's more of a distraction. So I found this one here, while not following that more classic sound that the Roadside EP had, I was a bit disappointed and not really appreciating as much of those modern influences on it, but still a very good 4-song listen. Okay, next up, we've got coming in at number 7, Charmed Life from 1990. 4th studio album at the time, recorded without longtime guitarist Steve Stevens. In fact, I think at this point, there's only the 2 albums that we've talked about that don't have Steve Stevens on it. This one here was predominantly a hard rock album where it's much more organic, far less use of the synths that he had done on the 3 previous albums, the 3 previous ones really being the classic Billy Idol sound that I think everything is compared to these days. With this one here, he explores some new territory, so that was a lot of fun. One of the reasons I still enjoy this album, I do enjoy albums where we get different people recording and different sounds and styles. So the fact that it was without Steve Stevens, I was curious as to what a Billy Idol album would sound like without it. But as I said, he explores some new sounds. So there's some blues, there's some jazz influences, a lot of different stuff, more of that straight on head rock sound. The album does feature the mega hit Cradle of Love. which in and of itself I think makes this album worthy. But you've also got the cover of The Doors' LA Woman, and this was at the time that Billy had appeared in the movie. And incidentally, he was supposed to have a bigger role in the movie, the Oliver Stone movie, The Doors, but he had injured his leg in that bike accident and couldn't do it. But I think that was all part of the tie-in with the song LA Woman. Great album, and still enjoying it to this day. All right, next up, number 6, Don't Stop from 1981, his debut solo release and first EP. This one here's got several of his classic songs on it. Moni Moni, which is the Tommy James and the Shondells cover song that he does, making it his own and being one of his first big hits. He would ultimately reach even higher levels with it when he would re-release a live version of this after he had gotten pretty popular with his first 2 albums. Dancing with Myself comes from this EP, though it would later be added to the debut album, where most people know of it being today because the EP Don't Stop is out of print. But Dancing with Myself being actually the Generation X song, Moni Moni being a Tommy James song. So not a lot of Billy Idol original. The other 2 songs are original on it. It's not one that I reach for very often, but a good EP and definitely a good start to his solo career. All right, coming in at number 5, The Roadside from 2021, second studio EP, first new music for him in 7 years. At the time when he put this out, it had been 7 years on since Kings and Queens of the Underground from 2014. And as I said earlier, this has a very classic Billy Idol sound to it. All 4 songs on here hit the mark. In my opinion, if this had been a full-length album, it would be one of his absolute best. I really, really enjoyed it. And even though there's 7 years between this and previous album, it very much sounds like that. If you liked Kings and Queens of the Underground, you would love this. If you love this, vice versa, do check out either one. But I really, really loved this one. And so therefore had much higher hopes for The Cage. And ultimately when The Cage came out having a different sound, that's why I was more disappointed with that than what this ultimately is. Okay, coming in at number 4, you've heard me talk about it and say how much I love it. Kings and Queens of the Underground from 2014, his 8th studio album, first new music in 9 years since Devil's Playground came out in 2005. This one here, perfect from start to finish. You know, it's crazy that he was able to make an album of this caliber 30 years on from those first 3 albums that he did, what I consider to be the classic sounding Billy Idol material with Steve Stevens being on this album here. This was just a breath of fresh air to get this after the 2 previous albums that were not in the typical style of Billy Idol. So I was so happy to have this, to get this back, which is what made the newest album, Dream Into It, the sort of disappointment. I kind of hate to use that word that it is, albeit it's still a great album, but it does not live up to this. This one here, standout tracks, opening song, Bitter Pill kicks off in perfect fashion. Second song, Can't Break Me Down. And ultimately, really, the first 6 or 7 are just absolutely outstanding. Postcards from the Past is another one that I really enjoy, but every song on the album, really good. Can't say enough great things about that album. Okay, coming in at number 3, Whiplash Smile from 1986. Third studio album, characterized by the guitar of Steve Stevens on this one, and of course mixing in still the dance beats and the synth production that we know from the first 2. This one was an interesting album. Again, each of the first 3 albums move a little further away from that punk rock hybrid music that Billy was doing when he started out with things. And this one here, for me, is a personal favorite. I really like all the tracks. We still have the standout songs like To Be a Lover, Sweet 16, Don't Need a Gun, but every song that's in between those is just as good, making this one of my favorite albums. And it's a go-to album where I probably reach for this more than any other Billy Idol album. Doesn't mean I don't like the next 2 that we're going to be talking about, but sometimes those next 2, as I'll point out, have songs that have been worn out on them, so I just don't reach for it as much. Okay, what are those 2 albums? Coming in at number 2, the self-titled Billy Idol from 1982. It was his debut studio album, second release actually, because remember he had the EP Don't Stop that came out first. Initial copies of this did not feature Dancing With Myself, which was part of that EP, but later copies did have it. And so, like myself, I only know that song from having appeared on here. So this album is always ranked a lot higher for me simply because of that song being on it. But even if you take away that song, it includes the classics White Wedding and Hot in the City. And incidentally, I always thought Hot in the City was a cover song, and I just looked it up to find out who. It turns out Billy Idol wrote it, so I had no idea. I thought it was a classic rock and roll song, but he wrote it, and it just goes to show the caliber of songs that Billy Idol can write, and in the many styles that he can write, to where it sounds like something out of the 60s being redone for the 80s, but in fact is a Billy Idol song. All in all, though, high energy rock and roll throughout that album from beginning to end, making it one of his best. But what is his best? I'm sure you figured it out by now. Rebel Yell coming in at number 1 from 1983, his second studio album. This one here has Billy exploring more on this one and moving further away from the punk rock hybrid that he starts out with. So I was really enjoying this album. I've always liked the variety of songs that are on this one. Even the hits tell the story of that variety, because we get Rebel Yell on here, which is along the lines of songs like White Wedding, but then we move into Eyes Without a Face, Flesh for Fantasy, Catch My Fall. So many different cool styles, really making Billy move beyond that punk rock moniker that he had come with, that he built himself up on, and still known for to this day, but he really has a lot of different styles under his belt. This one here has great flow song sequencing. It's a fantastic listen from start to finish. And again, all of the deep cuts that are on it are just as good, which is why it's coming in at number 1 for me. And there you go. That is my Billy Idol album ranking, including all 12 releases, his 9 studio albums, and 3 studio EPs altogether. So weigh in. Let me guys know, what is your number 1 Billy Idol album? And if there is a difference between the number 1 versus your favorite, let me know that too. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a good one. And I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.